friend Tom joining us today. We've mentioned him a couple of times over the years.
Do you have Crunchyroll on this?
Bastard.
Oh yeah, this is all the Resident Evils.
God, you literally got all of them.
Yeah, he did.
And 5.
I'm not saying anything.
He's made his peace
Funny
there.
enough, with Resident Evil 5, when you play it on your own, it's okay. But the most fun I ever had playing that game was when we did co-op.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But then the game was designed for co-op. That's
No,
the
it
point.
was.
So.
But I always felt like Sheva. I mean, I didn't dislike her character, but I always felt it should have been Jill Valentine.
Yeah.
Because there's never been a game, with the exception of Resident Evil
0, which is
Not 0. No, where Chris and Jill really do work together though as a team. Because in the original they're off doing different
their own things.
There's a game called Resident Evil Revelations where there is, I think towards the end of the game, where they do sort of work together, but you're only playing as Jill. Whereas I found like Resident Evil 5, particularly with Wesker being the main villain, it felt like such a perfect time for those two to team up together. But instead they introduced Sheva as a new character and whatnot.
I like to call her Shiva.
Shiva.
Yeah, but her name's Sheva, so get it right, come on.
Bastard.
See, the thing is with Resident Evil, with the games, like it looks like they're all on the path to being remade at the moment.
Yeah.
So they remade the original back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Then they did Resident Evil 2 remake, and then literally a year later they remade Resident Evil 3, which is, I would argue that the original's better than the remake. I felt quite
The remake's a bit more short.
Yeah.
By comparison.
Do they keep adding new stuff to the remake, or is it literally like scene for scene the same?
Two,
but just
two does have some drastic changes, but the actual storyline's exactly the same.
pretty much.
And it
Okay.
keeps it's one of those remakes where it actually really keeps and feels like Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Whereas like some of the other one, like the HD
played past
remake
2.
of 1 didn't feel like 1. I know that sounds really strange.
To be frank, it felt better in every way.
Yeah.
And granted, 1 came out very early in the PlayStation 1's lifespan and everything.
Yeah.
But the Resident Evil remake, like, because when I first played Resident Evil, I think it may have been the second one.
Yeah,
No. The first one I watched. I didn't play it. I watched. Was Resident Evil 1, the original.
Yeah.
And it was Jill's scenario. And granted, the voice acting was dumb and everything like that, but I was about 6 or 7 years old. I was very very young.
And impressionable.
And then, and then it legit terrified me. And I wasn't even playing it. And then I played Resident Evil 2.
And you shat yourself.
Yeah. No. Resident Evil 3 did that. But Resident Evil 2, which is probably the best game of the original game of the PlayStation, because for years I thought it was 3. I don't know, for some reason 3 really gelled with me, but when you go back in recent years and replay them, 2 for me is by far the best. And the one thing I think the original did better than the remake, even though I think the remake is a superior game, is I felt like the scenario A, scenario B, the way they handled that in the original was a lot better, because Mr. X only appears in scenario B, whether it's Jill or, because the canon I think is Claire A, Leon B, and Leon B deals with Mr. X.
Mr. X,
Leon B, or Leon deals with Mr. X and Claire deals with Birkin. Because of the link with Sherry and everything. But when you play the remake, Mr. X appears in both, and it doesn't really make that much sense.
Well, I think that he appears in both, and then he gets separated, and then you deal with Birkin and Mr. X separately. It's just one of those ones where like.
We made an Onyx video about a siren in the background.
Always a siren in the background.
The biggest disappointment with Resident Evil 3 remake is actually, in my opinion, it's the Nemesis itself. Because when you play the original, Nemesis is like a proper beefed up version of Mr. X. Like this idea of this monster is like stalking you throughout the city. And when you do encounter it, you can fight it, but my god, it can tank hits. Even if you get like a Magnum or a grenade launcher, he will still come for you. And there's like the part where he sort of plays possum and you think you got it, then he gets out again. Whereas in the
horror trope, isn't it?
and then if you decide to run away, he will chase you down until you get to like a certain point, and then for some reason he just stops. That's one door I can't get through. Whereas it
doesn't do wood.
Curses.
Whereas
Oiled again.
Whereas in the remake, it's only like the first third of the game, which is like that, where he's stalking you and chasing after you. Then after that, he's just, it's just boss battles. You know, you have to fight him. And it just takes away the fear factor. For me, it did.
It's also too short.
Yeah, there's like massive sections missing. There's like the clock tower areas missing. There's the part in the park, which is missing as well.
Do you think that was like just because they had to rush it out, or
it definitely felt like they were rushing 3 out after 2, and I don't know why.
See, the thing is,
2 was really, really good.
No, 2 was an incredibly polished game, and everyone was like,
this is how
it should be done.
Because I think the most popular thing that came from 2 is that everybody loved how they handled Mr. X.
Yeah.
You know, the footsteps.
I was also surprised at how good the graphics were in that.
Yeah, it looked amazing.
I mean, I've played it on PS5 and PS4, and
show off.
Ooh, someone's got a PS5.
Let me fucking finish what I'm talking about.
The graphics are brilliant on both.
Yeah. Such a PlayStation 5
He's only getting me back for ruining his Doctor Who room. Oh, I've got a good storyline.
Oh yeah, pitching Doctor Who, that might come back. Well, it might need to come back for
I'm not interested, mate.
It's not about this idea I've got for Doctor Who. No, that just wouldn't work. What, you're trying to make the systems useful? Yeah, well, they haven't been useful up to now.
So why is that Centaurine doing that?
What's your opinion on the Resident Evil 4 remake coming out? Because when I first played Resident Evil 4, I was like, I went through like a teething phase. I don't really like it.
You're going to hate me, actually. I prefer the game on the Wii.
Oh no, I agree. The Wii version of Resident Evil 4 is amazing.
And it was so much better than the
I'll be honest, I haven't played as much as these guys, so
I remember playing the original 4.
No, I don't hate you at all. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Fair enough.
The Wii version of Resident Evil 4 is the best version.
As soon as you go into that first person view, you're then using the Wii.
No, the motion controls were perfected. Like they were they were so well done, so well executed.
You noticed when I did have 4 on my PlayStation 4. I was trying to play 4 on PlayStation 4.
Because the sensitivity feels a lot heavier, doesn't it?
Like the Wii version, just whatever they did in the programming of that just worked so well.
The first time I played Resident Evil 4 was on the PlayStation 2 because I didn't have a GameCube. And I tried it once. I got like about 30 minutes in and I just couldn't get into it because it was so different from what had come beforehand.
Yeah.
And then for some reason I just started playing it again, and it was one of those experiences like you get with I had with games like The Witcher and Elden Ring, etc. And going back then, I just could not put it down.
Yeah.
I just thought it was amazing. And then it was like the catalyst or the genesis to like so many of these other games that came after it, like Gears of War, like behind, over the shoulder.
I
think that may have been the first big game to do that.
Oh, definitely.
Because they started working on it originally, they got like a massive chunk of it done, and then they ended up scrapping it and starting it all over again. Yeah. But apparently, some of the villains that were already in the original before they scrapped it are going to be appearing in the remake coming out.
Oh, okay, that'll be good. That sort of thing is what it would interest me in a remake, like bringing back some of the stuff that went on the cutting room floor for whatever reason. Bringing those things.
I think
back.
it's the Hookman. I think that's what he was called. Because I think the original Resident Evil 4 was meant to have a bit more of a supernatural vibe to it, and then they ended up scrapping it, and then they decided to do Devil May Cry. Instead, they took elements from that and made Devil May Cry.
Oh, I see.
Which is a fucking badass game. And I remember when that game came out, man.
That game was amazing.
I just could not believe how amazing it was. You're this badass demon slayer with a big ass sword and guns.
Hacking the fuck out of shit.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing remakes and stuff, the only thing that would kind of interest me for any remake, whether it's Resident Evil or anything else, is if they're adding something new to it. Preferably something that didn't make it into the original game for whatever reason.
Something that enhances the experience.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm a lot more story orientated than gameplay stuff. So it's kind of like, if you're going to add, so like with Resident Evil 3 remake, if you're taking stuff out, like the clock tower stuff, it's like, well, okay, I don't.
That was a big chunk of the original.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm sitting there thinking, there's no real reason to take it out.
They also took out big chunks of the street bits at the beginning as well.
Yeah.
Which I was just kind of just.
Well, Jill actually goes to the police station in the original.
Yeah, she does.
But with the remake, it's Carlos. It's like roughly a third of the way through the game or something. Carlos ends up going to the police station.
It's like taking stuff out doesn't make sense to me.
To me, there's good remakes and there's remakes that so. For example, to me, like the perfect remake is the Resident Evil remake.
Yeah.
I think they took everything. I mean, it's like they're like completely night and day. From atmosphere to gameplay to even things like voice acting. Like the atmosphere of the original Resident Evil game is outstanding.
Yeah.
And it still looks, and the fact it was a GameCube game that came out like 2001, 2002, and granted it's had a HD remaster, it still looks amazing.
Yeah.
And they added new elements to it, like, what's she called? Lisa Trevor?
Yeah.
So you know that girl that that she has all those like one of the most tragic stories ever.
Oh, that's
but the thing is though, it's like the game doesn't force it down your throat. Like you read it through the files that you can pick up, and you just realise like all the horrible shit that these bastards have done to her. You know, she has a little bit of everything in her. She has a bit of the G virus, a bit of the Nemesis virus, a bit of the T virus, and everything.
They did a lot of lifestyle changes to the actual way the game worked. So the map was a bit more intuitive and told you if you come across something, it would be like, it's here. So all the backtracking well, the backtracking you used to have to do on the original, which was really obnoxious, actually became a little bit more guided.
Through the door.
The original, it was just like, find this thing, and you're like,
go through it. Where
the fuck is that?
I mean, the remake had backtracking, but it made the backtracking a little bit easier to digest because in the original, when you go back to the mansion, the zombies are more or less replaced with those hunter enemies.
Oh god!
And like the hitbox was awful. You were never quite sure when you were going to get because they can potentially one-hit kill you. They can decapitate you.
Oh shit!
Whereas in the remake, it's a little bit more forgiving because you know the game plays a whole lot better. But to me, the Resident Evil remake is like a perfect example of what a remake should be. You take everything that was great from the original, you enhance it in every way, shape, or form, but then you add new things so it feels different. It's not just a gameplay thing, but story-wise.
The bit with the shark.
Oh god, that was terrifying! When you first go there, and then all of a sudden, okay, where the fuck is this thing? It's just eating poor Kenneth or whoever it was. This guy's eaten by the snake or by the shark, depending on who you're playing as. And then all of a sudden, the music starts building up. Because in the original, from what I get, it's been a long time since I played it, but it's kind of just floating around. Whereas in the remake, it's like, and it's building, and it's like cued to like the music track. So when it finally manages to get you, it's like timed, it's like synchronized to the music track. So you've got to like get out of there as soon as possible. And then there's that puzzle where you've got to release the water pressure, and the shark starts banging against the glass and everything. So, okay, what order do I have to press?
We always managed to bring a shark back.
Sharknado.
It's Sharknado, Resident Evil style.
So basically, Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2 remake did pretty much everything great. Resident Evil 3 remake completely dropped the ball. And frankly, Resident Evil 4 remake, although I will buy it and play it, despite thinking it shouldn't be made, I will still play it. You're trying to create something new from something that frankly was already perfect. What more? I mean, like Resident Evil 4 was just like, I mean, it's held in such high regard. And I think Capcom knows this, they're not stupid.
The only thing I think they can do with 4 is to try and
change the atmosphere of it, maybe?
Yeah, try and
make it not so action-orientated.
Retract from some of that arcadiness.
Yeah.
And have a little bit more of the, you know, you see the bullets and a little, you know,
how
Resident Evil used to do it is that, you know, flashing.
Yeah, you would have like bullets or files sitting on tables.
Blue halo that's like completely unrealistic. Maybe they go down that route and give you a little less ammunition. Because
when you look at the trailer, it doesn't feel like it's going to, and it's only from a few trailers we've seen, it's looking like, to me at least, like the action's going to be dialed back a little bit. Quite a lot actually, it feels a lot more horror orientated.
That's the whole point though, isn't it?
There's only like 2 big action things from Resident Evil 4 anyway.
Well, to me the best part of the game is actually the village. Like the village section at the beginning. And then you go to the castle and then it gets really, really fucking goofy from I love it though. I think it's amazing. The goofier it gets, the more I love it. Like you have like this midget guy called Salazar, and all of a sudden a big statue of him is chasing you. I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on, but this is amazing. And then you have Krauser showing up.
He used to turn up in the big plant at the end.
Yeah. The plant eats him and his like right-hand man, whatever it's called. And then
I might just skip straight to 4 and just play that and then edit it.
4 is a very accessible game. And 4's actually kind of like, it's almost like a soft reboot of the franchise.
Oh, really?
Because the game that came out before that was Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there to Resident Evil 4, Umbrella completely falls apart. There's not a game where Umbrella falls apart. They just tell you at the beginning, oh yeah, they found out their stocks crashed and Umbrella's over.
It's a bit like in Alien Resurrection where they're like, oh yeah, is this Wayland Utani? No, Wayland Utani.
They're dissolved.
200 years ago, this is Best Buy.
Basically.
It's Tesco. Ripley, sponsored by Asda.
It's stupid. That's what I mean. Alien Resurrection is stupid for that reason. Costco. Something. It's one of the big names.
Wholesaler.
Just like, this is
Walmart.
Walmart bought them out.
That's it.
That's in the film.
It is.
This is why I hate Alien Resurrection so much.
Well, for that one thing.
Not the dog.
It's one of many problems that film has.
Of all the problems that film has a lot of problems.
Being honest, when you look at it, so Resident Evil 0, 1, Resident Evil 2, 3, and then Code Veronica, you've basically done everything you can do.
I totally agree. I understand why they.
And it's like, it would have been good if you had a game where it's like, I don't know, say like the last thing was like, I don't know, Umbrella headquarters, and there's a zombie outbreak in the building. A little bit like Die Hard with zombies, if you think of it like that, and it's like that would be your game.
Oh, that would be great.
I suppose it was a game that didn't really need to be made.
No,
it's a bit like Resident Evil 0.
Yeah.
It's like I get like it's part of the canon and everything, but when you complete Resident Evil 0, you see Rebecca in Resident Evil 1. Where you're playing as Chris.
It's her walking into the Resident Evil 1 at the end of that game.
Yeah, right. But she doesn't mention it'd be a good thing to bring it up with him. She doesn't.
Just been on a train.
Chris is like, what the hell's going on here? And she's like,
just on a train with a quack monster.
You've just been through like hell with, you and Billy have been through hell and back together, and you don't think to mention it to is it Bravo or Alpha team, whoever it is?
Well, there's a group drinker go, no, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. And she goes, oh, I just went for a nap in the mansion. What if a zombie comes in or something? Oh, she's in a safe room. You're safe.
Oh, yeah, you're safe.
You're safe in the
safe
room. Yeah. Oh my god, how amazing is the save room music? Like when you're like, oh my god, I've just run from one end of the mansion to the other.
Someone's
in the room, then you hear that music.
Just relax for a second.
One of the good things about the Resident Evil remake, the first one, is it's kind of like, it used to be that you'd open the door, the front door to the mansion, and then you get like a weird CGI dog head trying to jump through. You open it too many times or something.
And the dog
jumps in and tries to kill you. You have to fight the dog. It's like, yes, this makes sense.
But funny enough, interesting tidbit about the remake of the original one. The GameCube was powerful enough to not have to render loading screens, in a sense like when you go into a new room.
Yeah.
So that you could literally just open the door and the character will go through it.
Yeah.
But during test playthroughs, the people who were playing were like, why have you not got the door loading screens?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't need to. Or you should put them back in. Because that's like such a big part of like, you don't like the door opening
and the stairs.
So those doors, like when it goes like first person view and the doors open, that was deliberately put back in. They didn't need to have those transitional screen doors in. But with the first playthrough, it doesn't bother you. But when you're playing it through, like I've played that game a lot. Like when you get to like the 10th playthrough.
Come on, can you at least pick up the pace a bit?
Yeah.
Come on, this is supposed to have a sense of urgency.
But I think you're right, Jack. At the end of, going back to what you're saying, I think at the end of Code Veronica, the formula was really tired.
Yeah, you've done.
And you could tell, like, it was. Code Veronica's a good game, but it didn't feel very inspired at the same time.
Unfortunately, Code Veronica had that obnoxious part in the middle where if you used up all the flame arrows, you couldn't defeat
the tyrant
on the fucking aeroplane.
You could, but it was very, very difficult.
And I'd start from the beginning of the game again. Or actually, I just gave up and didn't bother.
Also, with Code Veronica...
A bit like me with Resident Zero recently.
There was also something annoying with Code Veronica as well, is like whatever weapons you have on you as Claire, when you end her scenario, Chris doesn't get access to them.
Yeah.
So you have to jump. You have to. Yeah. But the game doesn't tell you or warn you or anything like that. So okay, I'm going to the final boss. I'm going to take all the best weapons with me. I'm going to take the grenade launcher. I'm going to take the bow gun, sniper rifle, and everything. So when Chris rocks up, You open the case, you open the box, and there's nothing in there. So you're like, great, I've got a bloody pistol to take out this massive worm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The worm is Chris.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
How old is Resident Evil 4? Like
I think it came out in 2004.
Yes, that's
18 years.
18 years.
It came out on the GameCube, and then Capcom came to their senses and realised we've just made a masterpiece. We need to put this on the PlayStation 2 because the GameCube wasn't a high-selling console.
No.
The PlayStation 2 was selling by the bucket load.
Yeah.
So they ended up releasing it on the PlayStation 2 and the game, and then later on the Wii and whatnot. I think that game's had then the PC, and then it got HD remastered.
Basically like the Skyrim.
Yes, it's the Skyrim.
How many copies can you get?
How many different variations? We've got an online version.
You've got at least 3.
Mobile. We've got a Resident Evil mobile version.